Thank you. My name's Dave Lodwig, and I'm with Conveco Technologies. We are a systems, material handling systems integration company, and one of our specialties is order fulfillment systems. We've done quite a bit in omni-channel, retail, direct-to-consumer, e-commerce, order fulfillment systems with my partner, Jeff Zahansky from Accutech Systems.
Accutech Packaging is a full-line distributor, and we specialize in automated solutions as well. And some of the things we're going to talk about as far as improved efficiency in your operations and what type of packaging. We do a lot of that internally, and we'll talk about some of that later. But totally automated solutions or manual solutions, how to enhance your operation.
Very briefly on our agenda, what we're going to talk about is why do you want to integrate packaging with your fulfillment process? What happens if you don't? We're going to talk about how we could help you, how you can, or the steps to take to integrate packaging with your order fulfillment process. And at the very end, we talked about our different expertises. So my company's expertise is really in the order fulfillment end. Jeff's company's expertise is in packaging technologies. So we're going to address what some of these packaging technologies are and how and why you would use them. So I guess everything now is an omni-channel environment. Even if you're not shipping, maybe raise a hand. How many of you are, first of all, how many of you are in operations, distribution operations? And then how many of you are connected to either you're fulfilling to a retail customer, or your company is a retailer or an e-commerce company? How many of those people? Maybe half? Half of the half. About half of us are in operations, about half of us are connected to retail in one, or e-commerce one way or the other. Excuse me. Thank you. So, you probably don't need me to tell you this. What's driving all these service levels? What's driving your management for you who are in operation? What's driving you to reduce costs, do things faster, do them cheaper, do them better, so on and so on and so on? Well, really, that's what it is. Some people call it the Amazon effect. But the way I like to describe it is, here's the largest direct-to-consumer company in the country. They sell everything. They sell it practically at the lowest price, if not at the lowest price. They deliver it, you get it in a day or less, at least 2 days if you're willing to pay for Prime, right? They don't charge you for the most part for shipping, right? Well, and why can they do that? For whatever reason, we won't talk about the philosophy. They're not a profitable company, and to date they haven't had to be for one reason or another. That sets the bar pretty high. Now, I hope, is anybody here from Walmart or Target? Macy's? Good. These are great retail companies. These are more than just great retail companies. But the reason why I bring them up, Walmart, largest by leaps and bounds. This Amazon effect is so prevalent that all they're doing, in my opinion, is playing catch up. The $400 billion company is just trying to stay level with an Amazon. not exceed them in many ways. Just stay level with them. That's how high that bar is set. And really what it means is that's really expensive for the rest of you who have to make money in your operation. So now I'm going to pour gasoline on that fire. Not only are you not able to charge for the most part for shipping, but those costs of shipping are going up. DHL dropped out. What was the first thing UPS and FedEx did? Raised rates. A year later, approximately a year ago from now, what did they do? Increase the dim weight charges or decrease that level that you pay over a certain dimensional weight, right? So bottom line here is your shipping costs are going up. Your opportunities for charging for that shipping are going down. So that high bar is getting more expensive all the time. And in my opinion, until there is sizable competition to FedEx and UPS, those costs are going to increase one way or another. So we talk about, the topic here is how to process things faster and cheaper. Well, how do you start? We feel you got to start with planning. How do you plan? You have to plan or design for doing so. The first thing is you have to know everything about your product. Who here of our operations people have in your software, your WMS or your ERP, whatever it is that's running your operation, how many of you already keep length, width, height, and weight of every product you move through your facility? How many? 2 out of roughly 10 or 12 people. Maybe as many 20. And I'm not surprised to see that. If you don't know everything you can know about your product, you don't know how you can package it. You can with people on your floor, but we want to take that out. We want to systematize this. We want to take cost out. We want to take time out. So you need to not only know, and unfortunately, here I am. I'm going to pour gasoline on that fire. That's not enough to know about your product. You need to know intangible things. You need to know, is it crushable? What's the fragility? You need to be able to set up fields in your software to know how you can pack a product. Just knowing how big it is. If it's crystal, Jeff's going to talk about some things that are automatic poly bags. Cheapest packaging material to ship something in is a poly bag. It can be as low as what, 10, 12 cents?
10, 12 cents low.
10, 12 cents. What do you pay for a carton? What's the carton cost these days? Anybody? $9? $1.25. Okay, so there's potentially, let's just call it round numbers, $1 per order savings. Who wouldn't want to capture that, right? Okay, but you can't put crystal in a poly bag, right? So there are other options for packaging things like crystal, and crystal is the worst case of it, but we want to know about it. We need to know something about it if it's hazardous, or let's say if you're in general merchandise, but you got something perfumey and you've got some grocery product. You can't, the grocery store, you can't pack certain products together. So you have to know, you have to have a field to break that out. So the thing that we like to say is you have to know how you're going to pick, or how you're going to pack every order before you pick it. We call that start at the end methodology. And the reason is, for sake of argument, in a distribution operation, you're going to have 3 different types. If you're a forward, in my opinion, if you're a forward-thinking operation, you'll have 3 different general types of packing. You'll have an automated method, at least one. You'll have a semi-automated, or maybe a couple of semi-automated packing methods. And in my experience, no matter how great Jeff is, you're still probably going to have things that have to be manually packed also. Now, if you don't know how that's going to be done before you pick the orders, before you process those orders, does anybody know what that forces you to do that's generally a pretty manual process? You got to sort them out by their pack type. And when I say you have to sort them out, I don't mean one of those big old fast running conveyors that sort things out. Most operations, that means additional manual touches. Worst case scenario is somebody having to make a decision because your system didn't tell them how to do it. So you're relying on Dave Lodwig and his judgment. I can get that crystal in that poly bag, it'll work for me. Do you want them making that decision? Probably not, especially if it's me, right? So the other thing is that you need to know about some of those characteristics. I keep doing this. There's a consolidation. You know, in all operations, all order picking's not created equal. But in many operations, especially direct to consumer, where orders can be 1, 2, maybe 3 lines in an order, in order to gain efficiencies and reduce some of those labor costs, we look to do some batch picking of some sort. And this can be in as little as 2,000 order a day operation. Obviously, in 10, 20, 30,000 order operations that are picking a 2-line order, obviously you're going to do some batch picking. But even if you're shipping to 100 retail stores, there may be a good opportunity to do that. Well, what you have to do is whenever you batch pick, you have to do some type of consolidation, whether it's manual or whether it's automatic, right? Well, we get back to that machine ability, whether it's going through a packaging machine or whether it's going through a material handling machine to automatically sort it, like a tilt tray or a cross belt sorter. It could be a person doing a manual sort, okay? So that's why you need to know everything about that product and segregate. And then what we do in a manual operation, we break orders down. I went too soon. We break orders down by the way and group them by the way they're going to be packed. Reason is so you can pick orders and they go directly through. They all go to the same packing operation. If not, you're going to touch it or you're going to process it. Somehow you're going to eat up capacity somewhere. It's going to cost you time, and time is money. So we want to know at the end, we want to know at the beginning how are we going to ship this order? How are we going to pack it? How are we going to ship it? So you say to yourself, Dave, well, that's a good question. How are you going to do it? We do it with a piece of software generically known as either a warehouse control, WCS, or warehouse execution software, WES. Don't get caught up too much in the name. If you have a very functional WMS, or you've customized an ERP system to exactly what you need and it does a good job, it may do some of this functionality. We pretend that you don't have any when we prepare for these, and we say this piece of software can do order management. It can run the machinery, not only for fulfillment, but run that machinery also for the packaging and the shipping solutions. There is middle ground in there, but this piece of, this generic piece of software, warehouse execution software, order management. First thing we like to do, especially in e-commerce, we like to skim single line, single unit orders right off the top. Segregate those right away. That's easy. That's a big win right away. You could do that tomorrow if you go back to your operation, probably. Single line, multiple units. Depending upon your business, we might treat them the same way. If they're small, we might treat them the same way. If they're not, we might treat them a little bit differently. How was everybody's peak season? Who had a great peak season? No problems. Who had a real problem in a peak season, if it was one? What was it? Inbound. You couldn't fill the orders. Unfortunately, I can't help you with that one. Does anybody have a better problem? You get an A for effort. Come on, somebody had. You bottlenecked at packing. That's not unusual. If this was a little more interactive, if I was better at getting you guys to talk to me, you might say, hey Dave, I can fix fulfillment, picking's the easy part. How do you get this packing thing done? And that's pretty common. Are you all manual? What kind of? Right, and Jeff's going to talk about this, but automation isn't going to handle 100%. We hear arguments from people, oh, well, that won't handle everything. Well, what if we could reduce 80% of the order cost, right? That's the difference between meeting your cutoff times and not, isn't it? Packaging and fulfillment, what you need to do in order, and I've just run out of my half time, but you want to do your best to quantify what your labor costs are. What did it cost you so that you had that bottleneck? And the metrics. What kind of throughput did you get per labor hour? What your material costs are, what your freight costs are. How often are you paying dimensional weight charges? Because all of these things are going to factor back into what you're going to have to do for your capital equipment requests, and that is, return on investment. We have to quantify those costs. And we can help you, we will help you do that. That's one of the things that we do. Real soft one. What does an error cost you? We've had some e-commerce companies tell us, we lost a customer. We have an acquisition cost of $7, $8, $12 per customer. To get him back costs 4 or 5 times that, or we never get him back, and they assign a value to that. That's a big help when you're factoring in an ROI. But what do your errors cost? If you're shipping to Walmart, those errors cost you one way or another. We're going to talk about shipping automation, how to do that, what it does. I do want to bring up accuracy. Is there anybody here whose error rate is greater than 1 or 2%? And what if it was? Would you be in trouble? You would, wouldn't you? So I contend there isn't anybody out there with an error rate that's reported to management, upper management, of greater than 1 or 2%. But that doesn't mean you don't have any errors, does it? Of course you have, but you're catching them. So the question is, what's it costing you to catch them? Some amount of labor, some amount of packaging. It might translate into freight costs. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff, who's going to talk about some of these packaging technologies relative to the type of product that you have.
Thanks, Dave. So everybody buys something online, right? And they get it delivered to your house. Everybody's gotten something by now. So when you get it, do you critique the packaging when you open the carton? How many people have critiqued it? I got to say, you probably think something about it at one point or another. Was it recycled? Was the box filled all the way? Was the bags inside filled with air? I used to do this one bag that would go through a tape machine and blow up inside the system, and people used to call me all the time and say, well, the bag doesn't have any air in it, but it filled up for the void inside the carton. But people's perceptions are certainly something that goes a long way when you consider what type of packaging to use. So what Dave's talking about, all the things that he provides as far as services and value added and all the things that you're here for, you're here to help your company come up with something better. There's objectives that you've gotten from last year's peak, and you've got a certain amount of budget, a capital, where your expenses. I've talked to a lot of people that come through our booth today, and it's like, okay, everything's interesting at the show, but what do I need to focus on this year? So everybody has a different agenda, and a lot of that stuff gets done upstream, like picking, racking, conveyor, all the things that get done when you design a new warehouse or update a warehouse. Everybody wants to get the package to packing, and it takes a lot of time to do that. You start a new project, you budget a certain amount of time, and all of a sudden you get down to the end of the time you've allotted, you've run out of money, and everybody says, packing, what's packing? I spent a lot of years at Sealed Air. They invented bubble wrap and a lot of different other types of packaging, and we had a vice president of marketing that always said, packaging was always looked at as a stepchild. And it's true. A lot of times people look at it, they're like, hey, is it really important? And I ask you, why? Why isn't it important? It's the last time you touch the product, your product that you're shipping to your customer, that's going to get to your customer. And it's the last time you touch it. Now your customer opens up the box and it's like, oh, did they care about my package? Did they take the time to cushion it? Did they take the time to explore recycled capabilities and what's available in the market? Years ago they used to use the peanuts. Those were always the first thing. Everybody hated them. You open up the box and it gets all over the kitchen. So this is something where, oh, Dave, you have a video. I'm going to go right by that. We'll show that at the end.
We'll show that at the end.
So this is important. Packing. So when you decide where you're going to go, like Dave said, you have to look at what's the biggest percentage of your products. What's going to happen to your products? Do they need cushioning, or is it mostly void fill? So cushioning, things like bubble wrap and Instapack, things you've seen in the marketplace that can provide adequate amount of cushioning. And if you wanted to improve your dim on your cartons, which is very important today, and your products like Tiffany's deserved or demanded that type of packaging, then there's products that are available in the marketplace to give you the lowest cube and protect your products based on the amount of cushioning that's required for that particular product. There's drop tests available, National Safety Transit Authority that will say, hey, I'll approve your pack for UPS. Those testing labs available. So what we try to do when we talk about cushioning is look at, hey, does it need to be cushioned? Is there a cushioning and a void fill application? Can we cushion on the inbound when we put it away? Is that important? Like Tiffany's will make glassware, and it might sit on a shelf for 6 months before peak, and it's got to have the same amount of bubble in it or air in the bubble when it was pre-packed as it will in October or November. So that bubble might be important. So the type of cushioning is extremely important, and also the potential to reduce dim weights. There's packaging available that would require less wraps and reduce the carton size that would obviously give you a better shipping rate today. So void fill, everybody's looked at void fill. You're getting things from e-commerce companies, internet, and you're going to get void fill. You've got airbags, you've got paper, you've got bubble, you've got there's paper peanuts. There's all sorts of things you can use. And really, it comes down to, are you packing at a manual pack station or are you packing in an automated fashion? Can we automate some portion of your business to increase your efficiency? And really, do you need void fill? If you're shipping a box of shoes and you're protecting the box in the box and there's a little bit of movement, is that okay? Is it okay to ship it that way? Are you going to get damaged? How much does your shoe cost? Is it $10 shoes or $100 shoes? What's the image of your company? All those things come into play in the type of void fill that you're going to use. So when you look at it, obviously I can't come in, and say, hey, use this, and it costs 10 times more than what you're using today. So there's a lot of things that you weigh as operations personnel or purchasing personnel. Anybody in a company is obviously concerned about cost. So we want to take more of a consultative approach to sit down and maybe, the savings comes from freight savings, which is really one of your biggest expenses. So there's a good way to look at everything and analyze it correctly to know which particular product makes the most sense for you. And then, what kind of environmental story do you want to paint? It's really important. Do you want to include, companies might print on the inside of their carton their environmental message. And then maybe it's not, hey, this is 10% of my product is recycled, or 30%, whatever that number is. Maybe it's, I saved 10 million pounds of plastics going into the landfill. That's a pretty big message. It paints a very nice picture to your customers. So there's a lot of different ways today that I use less gas in getting it there. Bubble wrap used to get 60 big bundles on a truckload. Today you can buy a skid of material and get it blown up in your facility. Bubble on demand. So there's a lot of things today that didn't exist before that makes a lot of capabilities for making an environmental story. So, part of the process is a big part of the process, whether you're in a manual pack station or an automated pack station. Or do you want to go to a little bit of both? Can you send 80% of your products down to an automated solution that we could automate? So in a manual pack station, we've always looked at how important it is. Now today, your packers, during peak, you certainly get a temp. During peak in an internet environment, and maybe your peak is Christmas, which most retail operations is, then you bring in a lot of temporary help to help do that. So we want to set up a pack station to make it so somebody can go to the pack station and it works. But there's some thought involved in that, not just throw them at the pack station. Are they packing with the right boxes? Are the boxes laid out? Where do the boxes come from? Is the bubble wrap set up in a way for cushioning that allows the packer to easily take it and wrap your product? There's bubble that's perfed. There's cutting dispensers. There's ways to enhance a manual pack station. So I might be able to take a manual pack station and go from 1.5 minutes per pack to, say, 1 minute and 10 seconds or a minute. If I can shave 20 seconds, 30 seconds off a pack, that's a lot of money. So if you need to stay in a manual environment, look at those things. If your packers are good, you might set up if you've got a right-hand person versus a left-hand person, your tape machine or tape dispenser, if you're using water-activated tape and you press a button and you get a piece of tape out, you want to make it so it's easy for the packer to get to. They have the necessary tools. Make the ergonomics very good. It's important. So labor is the number one cost in any environment. Does everybody agree with that? I mean, you've got X amount of people working in a warehouse, and that's a cost associated to it. And years ago, in a retail environment, you would go and pick one carton of something. And that might have 20 shirts in it for wherever you're sending it, or 20 widgets. Now you're going to one location and you're picking one item. So you have to get really good at knowing what you're doing to keep that flow going. It costs a lot more money to pick one item versus 20. Your return is a lot less, so coming up with more automated approaches on the upstream is very important as well. So what we try to do when we look at, does automation make sense? Obviously, you're going to spend money on something to improve your efficiency. How do we justify the cost? So whether the cost is $100,000 or $500,000, you've got to figure out the payback on that. Some customers like a year payback. It's got to be 12 months or less, 2 years or less, 3 years, whatever that is. Obviously, the higher expense items take a little longer to pay back. But theoretically, what we want to do is we want to look at what the cost is associated to the pack station. So if I give you a typical scenario in the warehouse, and you've got 10 packers in 7.5 hours, you can get out 4,500 packs. If I do 10 packs a minute, that's 25 cents associated to that pack at $15 an hour with a burden rate with benefits. So that might not be what you're paying, that might be the cost of the employee. And whatever the number is, some are higher, some are lower, but just using a general average, the labor for one pack is 25 cents. And somebody might say they're doing 2 packs a minute, but are you really doing 2 packs a minute? You got to look at the whole picture. On the upstream, how many people, how many touches are involved? Is it just done at the pack station? Or is it something done upstream, labeling, pre-wrapping, things on inbound get done? So we look at the total picture on what we want to accomplish. But usually, in a good ratio, on a lot of what we do, and really that's providing automated solutions, whether it's a bag or whether it's something that demands cushioning. Depending on the products, you might need cosmetics that get some lightweight cushioning. It might be apparel where you need no cushioning. So really, and it might be a combination of both, where we funnel some products to one machine and one to the other, and then some box scenarios with manual pack stations and so forth. So if I can increase the productivity going from 1 pack a minute to one person doing, say, 10 packs a minute, which is a pretty good increased throughput rate, that rate, at the same hourly rate, is going to come down to 2.5 cents a pack, which now I have 22.5 cents in labor savings from going to just 10 packs a minute. If I can get to 15, that's 900 packs an hour. If I get to 20, that's 1,200 packs an hour. So there's a lot of ways to look at that, but just to give a general scenario, I've got $225,000 to play with for doing 4,500 packs a day. Now, some companies are doing 20,000 packs a day, some are doing 1,000. Okay, if you're doing less than 1,000, there are more automated solutions. It just may not be $100,000 or $200,000 solution. It might be something that's less. But there are ways to grow into certain types of systems. But who wouldn't like to see that kind of labor savings? You're walking the show and you see box on demand, you see ways to reduce your carton, you see Sealed Air's got some things in their booths. We've got bagging solutions in our booth. Like, there's a lot of things to look at out there. What is that value? So that's what we want to look at. Do you all have possible automated solutions like that? Do you have ways to increase your productivity? How many people had the manual pack stations? And do you have, is it all done at the pack station where you're taping and you're filling the void fill all at the pack station? So even things like automatic case sealers, box erectors, things that can enhance certain things. How many carton sizes are you using? All things to look at when you're looking at, what makes the most sense. So it deserves a look, and that looking at what you're looking at is, as far as what's important, is the big picture. So work with somebody that's has that consultative approach and is going to help you solve your problem. Today, there's a lot of industry experts that have this specialty and really take the time to look at it. It's important. So Dave, I think we want to show the video.
Yeah, so after you get the product packed, there's still one more step that we can help with. That's the what I'll call dimensional weighing system. It's the process of capturing the weight on the particular shipping container. Are we playing?
No, go ahead. Do you want to play?
Go back. Capturing the actual weight of the shipping container. In this case, we can capture the physical dimensions if we don't know it from the database, automatically label it with any of your carriers, be they parcel, LTL, truckload carriers. This is very good for doing retail compliance labeling, all in one small, concise system. We have the ability to put labels on any or many sides of every one of your shipping containers. I say containers, it can be poly bags, it can be Jiffy wrap envelopes, it can be cartons, it can be totes. We've covered a lot. We're just about running out of time. We have about another 5 minutes or so. Have we generated any questions? Yes, sir. You know that you're smart. You're a smart guy. If you walk out on the floor, there's a few companies that will tell you, oh, we can capture all the dimensions in motion for you. I feel the same way you do. That was a system that we did for one particular client, and they sell products that cost a nut and bolt that costs a couple of bucks or less. And they've got some products that can cost thousands of dollars. In this case, there were some aftermarket automotive parts. Well, what they want, that was for error. That was for error correction. Capturing, if all else failed, we want to make sure we don't ship a $650 special seat cover when we think that we're shipping nuts and bolts. So you're absolutely right. It's not really there to capture the dimensions. It's there to make sure that we're shipping the right, not only the right labeled product that we think, but someone didn't make a mistake. I have heard from some clients throughout the years, there are some inside pilferage jobs where people will ship orders to themselves. You know, it's kind of like somebody goes in the grocery store and takes the $2 bottle of pretzels, empties it out and fills it with steaks. Say, you would do the same thing in check weighing. And you could argue that you could catch as many of those issues by weight. You know, and sometimes it's not malicious. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and the cost of those technologies, 2 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that at one of these shows. The cost of those technologies has come down. And quite honestly, you can dimension with a camera scanner now too.